but I've just noticed one of the goals where he had to try to step out to the cross, he was a little late, and it was one of the goals that got scored, right? And because he's a little late, the ball is going there. That's the only place for it to go, especially as you're reading it from the defense. You have to be ready to step, and it was in front of him too, to step into that and get to that ball and get to the guy and get to the body. And I think that because he's not as quick as he used to be, because he certainly isn't seeing the game like he did last year. I refuse to believe it. Something is not 100% okay with whatever's going on. And by the way, we're talking about margins because Greg Vanny was talking about margins. We're talking about margins that are like paper thin here. The difference between Maya Yoshida being like 100% on and 100% off is like 1 or 2%, you know?
But that's the difference between an MLS Cup run and being winless in 13. I'm right there with you, seeing a drop off in Yoshida, and that's why I was kind of calling for Zonka. And then once we got Zonka starting, I said, maybe not so fast. We'll pump the brakes and get Yoshida back in there. But I do want to say that signs were there. Last season, I was talking about how maybe we didn't appreciate the 2024 team as much, but there were questions of Yoshida in certain situations where goals were given up. And I was like, could Yoshida have done a little bit better? And those questions were there. So that's where I go back. Yes, he played every single minute of every single match. He's on the front page of the LA Times that I have behind me,
right,
hoisting up the cup. He was the captain there. But that's where that tough business decision maybe needed to be made. And I think, we were having, in the text thread with Sophie, and we were talking about it. Do we miss Jalen Neal? And I said a lot of times last season that Yoshida and Neal oftentimes didn't work together as a pairing because they were too similar.
Right.
So that's why bringing in Garces was kind of the magic bullet, because they were a yin and yang. They complemented each other perfectly. And that's why, Jalen Neal ended up losing that spot. I think with Yoshida's age, there was, and this is easy to say in hindsight now, with the way things are going, you could say, okay, maybe we let Yoshida go and maybe he's not happy about it and it's a tough business decision, but we saw it with Billy Sharp. We saw who people wanted the fans to bring back, but you needed to, be tough. I think Jalen Neal could bring you the same type of thing that Maya Yoshida brings. And then now you have Neal and Garces, where it's, yes, they're both young and there's the lack of experience there, but Neal brought a lot of that same composure, played much more mature than his age showed. And I think that's something where you look back at now, is Jalen Neal on a raise cheaper than Yoshida on a pay cut, who's maybe a little bit upset, and maybe he's a professional. He's going to go out there, he's going to do his job, but maybe mentally or subconsciously in the back of the head, if he's in press conferences saying he's upset about a pay cut, then it's in there.